Hello, everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is both shocking and revealing, as reports emerge from inside Belarus, suggesting that a significant number of Belarusian soldiers have refused to follow military orders, causing what some sources describe as a major breakdown within the country's armed forces. This development has reportedly sent shockwaves through Moscow, leaving President Vladimir Putin deeply concerned about the reliability of one of Russia's key allies in the ongoing regional military operations. What's happening inside Belarus is not just a local issue. It could have massive implications for the broader balance of power across Eastern Europe. According to reports coming from Belarusian opposition media and various international outlets, discontent has been growing among Belarusian soldiers for weeks, particularly regarding participation in joint operations with Russia. Some troops are reportedly demoralized, confused about their mission, and frustrated with their leadership. The refusal to obey orders reportedly began in a few isolated units, but has now spread to multiple regiments, particularly those stationed near the Ukrainian and Polish borders. Analysts say this could be one of the most serious internal challenges faced by President Alexander Lukashenko since the 2020 protests that nearly toppled his regime. For Vladimir Putin, this development comes at a terrible time. Russia has heavily relied on Belarus not just as a military partner, but as a staging ground for strategic deployments against NATO's eastern flank. In the last few months, Moscow has deployed advanced weapon systems and missile units in Belarus, underlining the importance of the country in Russia's defense strategy. However, if Belarusian troops are now refusing to cooperate, the reliability of the entire alliance is thrown into question. Sources claim that Russian officials have been pressing Lukashenko to take swift and harsh measures to restore discipline, but he faces a dilemma: crack down too hard, and he risks sparking a full-scale mutiny. What's driving this rebellion among Belarusian soldiers? Some insiders suggest that many troops are simply exhausted and demoralized after years of political repression and economic instability. Others argue that there's growing resentment over Belarus being pulled deeper into Russia's wars. Many of these soldiers reportedly signed up to defend their own country, not to serve as extensions of Moscow's military objectives. The refusal to obey orders may therefore reflect a wider national frustration, a sense that Belarus is losing its sovereignty and being dragged into conflicts that most citizens never wanted. At the same time, Lukashenko's grip on power seems increasingly fragile. Despite his strongman image, the Belarusian leader depends heavily on Russian financial and political support to keep his government afloat. Yet, public trust in his leadership continues to erode, even within the armed forces. Reports claim that senior officers have tried to calm the situation by offering soldiers improved living conditions and bonuses, but morale remains dangerously low. One leaked internal memo even suggested that several mid-level commanders had resigned or quietly refused to pass down orders they considered politically motivated. Moscow, for its part, is reportedly furious. The Kremlin views Belarus as an extension of its own security perimeter, and any instability there is seen as a direct threat. Some unconfirmed sources suggest that Russian military advisors have been dispatched to assist Belarusian commanders in regaining control. Others hint that Russian special units could soon take over certain strategic bases if Lukashenko fails to maintain discipline. Such a move, however, could backfire, fueling even more resentment among Belarusian soldiers who already see themselves as pawns in a geopolitical game controlled by Moscow. In recent months, both Russian and Belarusian state media have emphasized unity and cooperation between the two countries, portraying their alliance as unbreakable, but behind the scenes, tensions appear to be growing. Belarusian officials are reportedly frustrated with the Kremlin's pressure, while Moscow doubts Lukashenko's reliability as a partner. This crisis among the troops could be the spark that exposes just how fragile their alliance really is. Some analysts even speculate that this could mark the beginning of a gradual split between Minsk and Moscow, a scenario that would dramatically alter the security map of Eastern Europe. The situation is also being closely monitored by NATO and Western governments. Any signs of instability within Belarus are of great interest to neighboring Poland, Lithuania, and Ukraine, all of which have faced increased military pressure from the East in recent years. If Belarusian units are refusing to carry out Russian-aligned operations, it could signal a weakening of Moscow's influence and create new strategic opportunities for the West. However, Western officials are cautious. A breakdown in Belarus's military chain of command could also lead to unpredictable consequences, ranging from border incidents to internal uprisings. For Lukashenko, the crisis represents a defining test of his rule. His regime has survived mass protests, international sanctions, and diplomatic isolation, but losing control of his own military would be catastrophic. Reports suggest that he has summoned top generals for emergency meetings in Minsk, demanding full loyalty and threatening to purge any officers suspected of disobedience. Meanwhile, Belarusian state media remains silent about the reported refusals, portraying the military as united and disciplined. Yet online footage and testimonies from soldiers' families tell a different story, one of confusion, disillusionment, and anger. Putin's shock is understandable. Russia's long-term strategy depends on Belarus as a dependable ally and forward operating zone. A fractured Belarusian army could disrupt Moscow's entire regional posture and embolden opposition movements inside Belarus itself. Some Russian analysts warn that if Lukashenko cannot restore control quickly, Putin may be forced to intervene directly, either politically or militarily, to stabilize the situation, but doing so would carry enormous risks. Russian forces are already stretched thin, and any perception of occupation could provoke mass resistance among Belarusians who have tolerated their leader only out of fear, not loyalty. The broader question is whether this breakdown marks the beginning of a deeper transformation within Belarus. Over the past few years, the country has been drifting ever closer to Russia, both militarily and economically. But this rebellion, if confirmed, could indicate that a growing portion of the Belarusian establishment no longer wants to be part of Moscow's orbit. There's even speculation that certain elements within the military may be sympathetic to opposition movements or quietly communicating with Western intermediaries. If true, this would represent an extraordinary shift in a country long seen as firmly under Russian influence. As this story unfolds, the stakes couldn't be higher. A divided Belarusian military could trigger instability not just within Belarus, but across the entire region. It could embolden opposition groups, encourage NATO to increase its presence near the border, and force Russia to divert resources from other fronts. For now, both Minsk and Moscow are trying to project calm, insisting that everything is under control. But behind closed doors, the panic is reportedly real. In the end, this moment may prove pivotal in the history of Belarus, whether Lukashenko can reassert control or whether this defiance spreads further remains to be seen. What is clear, however, is that Putin has been caught off guard. The assumption that Belarus would always remain a loyal, obedient partner is now in question. And as the soldiers' refusal reverberates through both capitals, it raises a deeper question about the limits of authoritarian power in an era of mounting resistance. For Belarus and for Putin, The consequences of this military breakdown could be nothing short of historic.